If you're struggling with your vitality, energy, mood, focus, or sleep, this podcast is for you. Your host, Dr. Tsung, ER doctor and aerospace flight surgeon, will help you reach for the stars and remove the barriers or blockades that have been holding you back from living your best life. If you've been challenged by your health, relationships, or productivity, then it's time for a breakthrough. So here's your host, Dr. Tsung.
Hello, welcome to It's Not Rocket Science Show. I am your host, Dr. Tsung. In this episode, I'd like to talk about why it is so hard to lose weight. It's because of the hormonal issues that we experience, like insulin and cortisol. And that is why when we want to lose just like a few little pounds or, we try all these diets, it just doesn't work. We're going to talk about why insulin level is important, why cortisol level is important, and the action steps you can take to actually reset your brain set point for your weight. And that's really the main thing. It's not about calories at all whatsoever. So let's go ahead and dive in. In episode 32, I talk about intermittent fasting. And in episode 33, I talk about why eating healthy fats can actually get you fuller and help you lose weight. And in this episode, I'm going to be tying everything together and kind of give you the reasoning why those things actually work. Okay. And, a lot of people, even me myself, I've done low fat diet. You probably have done some sort of calorie restriction to lose weight, or maybe a low sugar diet, paleo, keto. They're all various forms of diets. And there's so many out there. Usually it works for a while. And then after a few weeks or a few months, then you plateau and nothing else happens, or you gain your weight back. Or perhaps, somebody who is actually severely overweight, and it is so hard, no matter what they do, what they try, the weight just won't come off. And I read this book by Dr. Jason Fung, The Obesity Code and the Cancer Code. And I absolutely love the book. It just explains everything from a hormonal standpoint, in terms of obesity from a hormonal standpoint, instead of from calories and different diets. It really gives you the root cause of why people gain weight and can't get it off. Obesity is a hormonal issue, not a calorie issue. And essentially what that means is obesity is caused by insulin level. Okay. It's very, very simple when you actually dial down to it. So when you have high insulin level, when you have glucose or sugar, basically when you ingest glucose or carbohydrates, a lot of people actually have a misconception, like I don't drink anything sweet, I don't eat anything sweet or add a sugar. But if you're eating refined carbs like pasta, anything white, like white flour, rice, then it will be converted into sugar or glucose. So when you ingest it, usually your body will secrete insulin so that the cells can take those insulin in, or take the glucose into the cells to be utilized. And when you ingest those refined carbs, you have a very sharp rise in your sugar level in the body. And then you have a very sharp rise of insulin to kind of combat that. And the insulin stays high for a very long time too, when your sugar is that low. And I have personal experience with that because I've been wearing the Dexcom, the continuous glucose monitor, for many years now. And I can tell my body responds if I eat nuts, lean protein, olive oil, avocado, my sugar goes from 80s to maybe like 110, 120s, and that's it. And then goes back down. And within usually 2 hours. But I've had also pizza, or I've had rice, like rice noodles. Oh my goodness, that increases my glucose to about 180s, 190s, or sometimes 200s if it's pizza. And it stays up. It doesn't start going down to baseline for 4 hours. So I have a really sharp peak and long duration. So insulin is what helps you take the glucose in, and it's a fat storage signal. So you take the glucose in and it signals your body to store more fat. All these excess energy needs to be stored as fat. So it's very, very simple. So you can see as an example, in a medical example, type 2 diabetics, typically they do secrete insulin, but they have insulin resistance. So their body is not actually able to take in the glucose as well. So the body secretes more and more and more insulin. Anyway, you see that a lot of type 2 diabetics are overweight or obese. But if you look at type 1 diabetics, their issue is that their body actually cannot produce insulin at all whatsoever. There's a low level of insulin, and they're actually very skinny. They're usually thin. So I thought that was just an incredible way to explain kind of the root cause of obesity. And this is why that, when you try to decrease your calories intake, usually, so your brain already has a set point for your weight. And when you try to decrease your calories intake, your brain will actually decrease your metabolism. You might lose weight initially for a bit, but your brain will decrease your metabolism to kind of match that caloric intake. So you stay at the same weight and then you plateau. All right. And the second thing that happens that's very important is if you take in artificial sweeteners, even though it doesn't increase your actual body sugar level or glucose level, it will still stimulate insulin response. So you may not have an increase in glucose, but you will still increase your insulin. And again, an insulin is a fat storage signal and a hormone. And so a lot of times you don't usually see people who are drinking a lot of diet products or diet soda. Many of them are actually not that thin. So the other thing with the hormones is that increased stress increases your cortisol. Cortisol is a fight or flight hormone, essentially. When you're stressed out, then you need more glucose, you need more sugar, energy, right? So when you have increased cortisol during stress, and that can be due to work stress from family, it could be lack of sleep. That's a form of stress. It could be working night shifts. Then you increase the sugar in your body level, and then that therefore increases the insulin again, and that increases fat storage. So that is why obesity is a hormonal issue. You have to address essentially the peak or the level or sharp rise of insulin that occurs when you eat refined carbs or sugar, and also the duration of it, how long you've been exposed to. And when you are stressed out, that basically worsens your insulin level and insulin duration. And the other thing is, when you have been overweight for some time or obese for some time, your brain is already at that set point for that specific weight. And because of the duration, if you've been overweight for a long time, 10, 20, 30 years, it's even harder to lose weight because usually there's some sort of insulin resistance going on. So it's not just the level, the peak and trough of insulin, but how long you're exposed to that high level of insulin that plays a role as well, because that leads to insulin resistance, where when you have a high level of hormones, then your body basically will not respond to the hormone as well. Okay. So you need higher level insulin for your body to actually respond to it. So it creates something called insulin resistance. And that is the reason why it's so difficult for somebody who has been obese for so long to not be able to lose weight. And that is why time restricted eating pattern comes into play. Because if you set a time restricted eating pattern, as in you only eat from 12 to 8 p.m., or you only eat 10 hours of the day instead of eating all day or snacking all day, then you decrease the duration of time your body is exposed to the rise and fall of insulin. Okay, so again, I want to summarize. Obesity is a hormonal issue. It is caused by increased insulin. And when you have a long duration of insulin exposure, then it leads to insulin resistance. Okay. And cortisol increases your sugar level, which increases your insulin level. And that exacerbates like the whole cycle as well. And that's why when you see night shift workers, a lot of times they're kind of eating during the day. They eat before they go to sleep. They eat not very healthy food at night. They're stressed out at night. Their body is not sleeping well. They should be sleeping at night, but they're not. And a lot of shift workers are overweight or obese. And so the action that you can take now in order to address the weight issue to kind of decrease your insulin level is number one, you go to your pantry right now and you read all of the labels, and you have to be very careful. It's going to be minimally processed food. Whole foods would be best. If you have something with packages or a label, you want to look at their ingredients and look up 50 different names for sugar, because they have dextrose and sucralose and fructose and even like various forms of syrup that doesn't have sugar syrup, but like we found that Hershey's chocolate syrup, actually the cacao is actually the last ingredient. And then the first ingredient is high fructose corn syrup. So whatever comes first has the highest amount. Whatever comes last has the least amount. So I would go to your pantry and look at all of the packaging, look for anything with added sugar, and take something. And also if you have any diet products, again, those stimulate insulin too. And just pick one thing or two that you know that you can remove from your everyday diet. Okay. And it has to be something that's feasible for you. And then number two, you want to increase the amount of fiber, especially like whole foods with lots of fiber, and vinegar into your diet, because fiber and vinegar will decrease the absorption of carbohydrates. So it will kind of slow down the absorption. And so you won't have that sharp rise of insulin. Just like Italians, when they eat bread, they usually eat it with olive oil and balsamic vinegar. So the oil will also decrease the absorption of the carbs as well. So again, if you can incorporate like chia seeds or flax seeds or any sort of vegetables, greens, high fiber, whole foods, minimally processed, natural fiber, don't blend it. Like a lot of fruit smoothies are blended, and basically you lose that leads to a very, very sharp rise in your sugar instead of eating whole fruits. Okay. And then what you want to do is you want to set a time for eating, like an eating schedule. So what time do you eat from? Do you eat breakfast at 7 a.m. and then you stop at 8 p.m.? Okay. So currently your eating duration is about 13 hours. And so maybe you can start by cutting back 1 hour or cutting back 2 hours. So say instead of stopping eating around 8 p.m., you can do 7 p.m., you can do 6 p.m., whatever you want to do, or you can eat later. You can delay your breakfast time or not eat breakfast, which is what I usually do, until 10 or 12 and see how you do. And so you take in the same amount of calories, you just decrease the duration that your body is exposed to the rise and fall of insulin level. So that is going to address the insulin resistance portion, so that you can basically change your brain set point. If you don't, essentially, obesity is a brain issue. We don't address the brain issue. The brain is what has that set point, and also like produce like signals the hormone secretion, cortisol, insulin, etc. It's very, very important. And then next, you want to have some moderate protein intake and increase your healthy fat. So if you want to dive deeper into what are healthy fats, go to episode 33. Lots of olive oil, nuts, raw. If raw nuts are better than roasted nuts, and avocado, etc. Okay. And then, so as a summary, obesity is a hormonal issue. It is usually due to insulin level peaking, and also the duration of it causes insulin resistance. So if you don't address insulin level, not just calories, it's not sugar level, it's insulin level, then you'll have a pretty difficult time to lose weight because you can't really change your brain set point. And you also want to address your cortisol level, so your stress level. So assess your sleep. Are you sleeping okay? Are you sleeping enough? Perhaps increase your recovery. So you need to have the grit to recover, because that's a productivity hack too. If you don't recover, you can't produce. Your brain is not going to be able to focus as long, and the sleep too. Your brain's not going to be able to focus as much if you do not recover and back off. So meditation or some sort of visual imagery, 6-phase meditation. I love that. I do that every morning. Sensory deprivation flow tanks. That's what I do as well. It's fantastic. It takes away all stimulation and just lets your body and your brain rest to go to a creative side or meditative state. And perhaps there's yoga, spending time with others, family, and just doing things you love, something you find joy in. Spending time with your pets, your children, all those can decrease stress level. So I would say the most important is sleep. So now I want to challenge you right now just to take one action. I know I talked about a lot of things that you can do, but just take one action. What is one thing that you're going to do now? Either you're going to address your added sugar, you're going to address the time that you eat, the feeding window, or you're going to address your sleep, your stress level. Just pick one thing. I don't want to overwhelm you with so many things. Write it down. For the next week, I will go to bed at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. Or for the next week, I will stop eating at 7 p.m. Or start eating later, like 10 p.m., etc. And that's it. Okay. And if you can sustain it for 1 week, then keep going and then stack another action item on top of that. It's called micro habit stacking. If you get too overwhelmed with too many things that you have to do, there's too many things you have to think about. So it's just not, it's more likely you will fail. You may not, but you may. So think about the micro habits and just one action after this episode. Okay. And I wanted to thank you so much for your attention and your presence. If you want to see the links in the show notes that I talked about, go to itsnotrocketscienceshow.com. And if you go to my Facebook, Tsung MD, and join my private Facebook group, I have uploaded the 7-day masterclass on productivity. And it's essentially all of the tips and the tricks and my planning, my routine on how I get the most out of my day so I can do multiple ventures like real estate, podcasts, working full-time and part-time in the ER, ICU, etc. And also spend time with my loved ones. So please go check it out. Go to my Facebook, Tsung MD, join the private Facebook group. Alternatively, go to Inside Rocket Science Show. You go to the bottom and you can sign up for that masterclass. So again, thank you so much. And remember, everything you need is within you now.
That's it for today's episode. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. One lucky listener every single week that posts a review in iTunes will win a chance in the grand prize drawing to win a private VIP day for a health and life makeover with Dr. Tsung herself. Then be sure to head on over to itsnotrocketscienceshow.com and pick up your free gift from Dr. Tsung. Then join us on the next episode.